From River West, the greatest neighborhood in all the world, right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, this is The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. Okay, so the impeachment trial. What do we think about this? Oh, boy. All right. I've got some random thoughts for you. Well, they're not too random. First of all, let me just make a plea. Let's not watch it like it's a big, exciting TV show. Let's try to differentiate the impeachment trial and all that it entails from the Super Bowl or your favorite soap opera or whatever dramatic series you're currently binging on one of your many streaming services. This is always a concern of mine, that because it's being filtered through the exact same medium of television, that screen, and there's certainly quite a lot of drama in this particular story, I'm always very concerned that our brains are going to take it in and just automatically put it on the same shelf. Because there are so many similarities. They're the characters, they're the heroes, the villains, the drama. And then the presentation, it looks just like a football game. You got your panel of experts analyzing every little minutia. And it concerns me that our very limited human brain capacity just can't differentiate. And it all becomes just shadows on a wall in the cave. I don't think you and I have ever talked about it, but I've talked about it on other programs. And that is the old classic book. What is it? 7 Arguments for the Elimination of Television? Is it 7 arguments or 5 arguments or 10 arguments? I forget the number, but it's X amount of arguments for the elimination of television. Now, this was written many, many years ago, but its main points still apply. One of the main arguments that stayed with me, and it's been years and years since I read this, but just sort of the physiology of the experience of television, how it goes straight through your eye socket, right on a beeline to your brain, with no filter in between. The writer makes the argument or makes the case that watching television is a passive activity as opposed to reading, which is an active activity. Or listening, what you're doing right now. You're listening to me. Your brain is active as you listen to me. It has work to do. It has things to do when it's only getting audio impulses. That gives your brain a lot of responsibility. When you're reading, it has even more responsibility. It's got things to do. It's active. It's firing. But when you watch television, your brain has almost nothing to do. It's a direct input. I'm not going to say don't ever watch television. I'm not going to say that I never watch television. But it's a good thing to be aware of. It's good to just check in once in a while. Check yourself. Am I being hypnotized in the moment? Am I just blindly, sleepily going along? Oh, man, talking about sleepy. Joaquin Castro is not a good orator at all. Man, I had a very hard time staying awake when Joaquin Castro was doing his thing. He's one of the impeachment managers. He's not good. He's just not good. Of course, he's no Bruce Castor. That was the first day. Yeah, that first day we all thought, okay, well, we don't even have to pay attention. It's just, they're just going to vote whether or not it's constitutional. And we all knew how that was going to come out. We thought it would be a boring day, no news. But this guy, did you see any of it? Oh, poor devil. Just completely ill-prepared. Just up there tap dancing, doing some kind of a weird improv thing that I was familiar with. Yeah, let's do some long-form absurdist improv for a little while in front of the 100 senators. Let's see how that goes over. Oh, man. That was entertaining. So, okay, we got through the first day. Then yesterday then was day 2. And we really got down to it. Okay, now we're moving. So, a couple of things to think about. The Orange Menace, of course, is the subject of this impeachment. But I wonder if they're going to at all get into his accomplices. Because I can't help but wonder, and it's a question we'll never know, and it's a question we've asked for the last 5 years. Is the Orange Menace an evil genius, or is he just evil? Is he crazy like a fox, or is he just crazy? It's always been my contention that people give him way too much credit. I really think he's just driven 100% by ego and power. He loves to fight. He loves to have enemies. And he loves to have adoration. And when you put all that together in this weird conglomerate of a beast of a Frankenstein's monster, yeah, to have thousands of people cheering you and loving you and chanting your name, that's good enough. I mean, pretty good. Exactly what he wants. But then at the same time, to have them be really crude and horrible people who want to shoot guns and pummel people with flagpoles and take battering rams to the doors of Congress, sure, I mean, I could see how he'd really get off on that. But I kind of think he's too stupid to have done all the things that the Democrats say he did. I mean, he did them. They're right up there for us to see. He did indeed, a year ago, he started planting the seeds about how, well, if I lose, it's only because they cheated. He was saying that a year out from the election. There's no way I can lose. If I do lose, it's because of fraud. That doesn't take a whole lot of brains or imagination. That's not some evil scheme. That's not a Bond villain. And to have all these rallies and whip everybody up and tell them how great you are and how evil your opponents are, I mean, this takes no imagination. And then when he did lose, said, okay, well, all right, I didn't lose. I refuse to concede. I'm just going to say I won. On election night, he came out. We won this election. It wasn't even close. They've cheated. And that's what gets me to the accomplices, because then he's got Rudy, and he's got this whole merry band of weirdos willing to, lawyers willing to take these cases into 60-plus different courts, and they lose every damn case. So this seems to be his M.O., that he's this wannabe crime boss with only sort of big picture ideas and this kind of branding that he does. And then, as president, you can assemble some talent around you to actually get things done. He had his little Nazi buddy, Miller, to write legislation and to write speeches for him about how immigrants are coming to rape your children and kill them. So now he's got a bunch of mobster lawyers ready to, do the paperwork on this stuff, on his grand idea. And his grand ideas are just sort of, I think the impeachment managers see something that I've never seen in him. Any ability to organize or to have an original idea, to actually think something through. And he had no idea how elections work. He doesn't understand the Electoral College. I'm sure up until a couple of weeks before, he had never heard of January 6th and understood what that even meant about a joint session of Congress certifying the electoral votes. He didn't even know what a joint session of Congress meant, probably. He's a dope. But again, he's got these guys around him. They can say, hey, you know what? January 6th, that's when it becomes official. So there's where you have to stop it. Okay, great. Let's get a big rally of thugs here. So I'm interested in the accomplices and how they enabled him to do this, because I think he's just too damn stupid. Well, let's see. The way they wrote up the article, I've always said, is way too narrow. I really wish they could have a more general article that just encompasses everything. He says, this is a really bad guy. This is a very, very, really bad, terrible person, and we want to impeach him. Signed, the Democrats. Or throw the entire book at him and make it, 15 different articles. Everything that he's done, from the family separation to all 10 counts in the Mueller report, and then to all of the various incidents of voter fraud that he's attempting with frivolous lawsuits. And he's strong-arming state legislators and secretaries of state, trying to steal millions of votes from Detroit and Philadelphia, Milwaukee, And then the big capper, he sends terrorists to assassinate Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi, to break down the doors of the U.S. Capitol and kill democracy. But this dumb precision of inciting the insurrection with this one particular speech, that just gives the Republicans such an easy out. And it even gives me doubt because of his failure of imagination, which is a phrase now we've heard thrown around a lot. That was what they said about the Capitol Police and everybody in charge of security for that day. It was a failure of imagination. In other words, well, they just couldn't imagine that his supporters would actually kill and maim, beat people senseless with American flagpoles. I'm guilty of that failure of imagination. I didn't think it was going to happen. And in hindsight, of course, they did it in state houses. These armed militia types got into the Michigan State House rotunda. We had the plots to kidnap and possibly assassinate Gretchen. What's her name? Governor of Michigan? I forgot her name. Oh, Whitmer, right. Governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. So, yeah, shame on me for my failure of imagination. But, I think the Secret Service and the Capitol Police and the D.C. Police and the National Guard and whoever else is in charge of these things, they ought to have a little more imagination than I do. My fear, just like all the stores that boarded up their windows, the stores and the banks, and they were anticipating trouble, but the kind of trouble we've seen before. Fights breaking out in the street between protesters and counter-protesters, and that can be really bad, and people can die. We've seen it. But I didn't imagine that what happened could happen. And part of me really kind of believes that the Orange Menace couldn't imagine that either. Not because he's a good person, because he's too stupid. He has no imagination. He steals every idea he's ever had. He's never had an original idea in his life. So that brings me back to his accomplices. Giuliani, Flynn, Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, Don Jr., the Pillow Guy, Ivanka, everybody who was having that little party with him in the big old tent right before his speech. Every one of them has been in some big smiley picture with a Proud Boy leader or any number of nefarious racist kooks and crooks. And there was all this online activity, all this chatter leading up to that terrible day that, yeah, in hindsight, we all should have known. None of us should have had that failure of imagination. But least of all, the President of the goddamn United States. How does he not know this? Especially with the merry band he's got around him, posing in those pictures with all the bad guys. They've got to be aware of this. They had to have known that storming the Capitol was just in the cards. It was part of the plan. And if they knew, he had to know. So that's why I think an investigation into the accomplices is kind of important to understand this story. Because as it is, it looks like he's just one sole player. He's this one guy, this mad evil genius who summoned the mob, assembled the mob, and then sent them down with their marching orders. Being very careful to use mob boss language. The mob boss doesn't say, hey, go kill Charlie. I want him dead. No, he says to the hitman, Charlie, yeah, maybe you could take care of that problem for me. That's the way he talks. He talks like a mob boss. Maybe you could do us a favor, though. Now, even though I have my doubts, I don't give him enough credit to be any kind of a mastermind. I still say he ought to be impeached. It kind of doesn't matter whether he's an evil genius or he's just evil. It's kind of beside the point. If you knew it was going to happen, if you planned it, if you set it in motion, then of course you're guilty. On the other hand, if you suffered from a failure of imagination because you're just big and dumb and it all happened anyway, well, you should have known it. You should still be impeached for just being so damn dumb and letting it happen and being the trigger for it to happen. Because there's one thing that's indisputable. He is the sole person responsible. Whether it's, as his lawyer clumsily pointed out on day one, whether it's murder one or manslaughter, either way, you did it. You're responsible. And that's why it goes back to the way the Democrats wrote the article. It should have been either more broad or way more sweeping, and should have been a dozen or more articles. To hang the entire thing on this precise word of incitement and give the Republicans the biggest favor in the world, oh, well, we can get all legalese about it, and we can insist on reasonable doubt, which is exactly what they'll do. So I'm not pleased about that. Which brings me to another point I really need to make. You'll hear some commentator on a panelist say this once in a while, but it really bears repeating. This is not a jury trial. So these guys who want to play lawyers and try to define exactly what a high crime or misdemeanor is, the exact definition of incitement, yeah, you'd have to do that in a criminal trial. There are very severe rules in a criminal trial, for good reason. It's to protect the accused. You can't be all slapdash about it. There are rules of evidence, and the judge plays a very important role in enforcing those rules. Juries are selected very carefully, and they must personally guarantee, yes, I will be objective and rule on the evidence before me. And they're not just taken at their word. They're quizzed. They are grilled. You've been on jury duty once or twice, haven't you? I know I have. And lawyers on each side have a right to boot anybody they want. But now we've got 100 jurors who didn't go through any process like that. They don't promise to be objective. Hell, nobody expects them to be objective at this point. Most of them anyway. So just don't get caught up in all that legalese crap. It doesn't apply. This is not the OJ trial. It's a political exercise. And politics, as much as we all want to deny it, politics cannot be separated from morality. In the simplest, most basic definition of politics, it's how we come together as a collective and get things done. And when that thing we need to get done is democratic self-governance, each of us, all of us, have to take some moral responsibility. So this is not a little legal game where Perry Mason beats Hamilton Berger because he's clever. This is an exercise in governance, in politics. It's a damn serious coming together of a nation to make a moral statement. Well, speaking of trials, the best news I've seen in the last couple days here, we've been talking a long time about what legal charges the Orange Menace will face as soon as he's out of office. And we've still got all of the tax issues, and we've got the many women who have charged rape and sexual harassment. He's got, I lost count, a dozen different cases just waiting for him, already in the works. Well, add to that now voter fraud. Georgia's Secretary of State, the now infamous Brad Raffensperger. Well, they've opened up an investigation into the Orange Menace regarding voter fraud because of the phone call we all heard. Hey, man, I just need some votes. Can you get me some votes? If that wasn't a crime, I don't know what crimes are. So if you want to get into all this really hardcore legal proceedings here, we'll have plenty of opportunities for that. And that phone conversation, that taped conversation we all heard with Raffensperger and the lawyer, you can repeat that how many times over? He had legislators from Michigan over for lunch at the White House one day, strong-arming those guys. He or his accomplices were doing the exact same thing in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in Arizona, in Nevada, everywhere. So let's see how many charges we can bring on the guy. And the beauty of it is impeachment has nothing to do with any of that. Whether or not he's impeached, whether or not he's convicted, whether or not he's disqualified from future office, none of that matters. All of these state cases are separate. Bring them on. So I'm still very hopeful. I've heard commentators say, no, you're never going to see him in an orange jumpsuit. He's got way too much power for that. I don't think so. I think we'll see him in an orange jumpsuit before too long. I'm looking forward to it. So, So we've got another day or two for the Democrats to dazzle us, which they've done here in the first day. They really have provided a great service. I said in the run-up to this, in sort of the pregame conversation, that at the very least, we have an opportunity to tell the story in a comprehensive, cohesive way, that everybody gets it, we understand what happened, the first draft of history is written, Americans understand. You know, I was thinking, I wish I was a pollster sometimes. I wish I had a whole polling apparatus at my disposal. Because the questions I'd ask two questions. So far, in what you've heard from the Democrats, how much do you believe to be truthful? Just give me a number between 1 and 100, or even between 0 and 100. Is it 0% truthful? It's all a pack of lies? Is it 100% truthful, every single word of it? Maybe you think they're spinning a little bit. Maybe you think they're reaching a little bit, so it's 80% or it's 60%. Just give me a number. I'd be very curious to know what Americans say to that question. And then question number 2, this is only a 2-question survey. How much of what you're hearing, how much of it is news to you? Oh, I didn't know this before. And again, between 0% and 100%, give me a number. Because I think a lot of people, like you and me, we follow this every day. We're news junkies and we read and we're always paying attention. So much of what we saw in this first big day, we already knew. But some of it was new even to us, even to the smarty pants who tell us what's happening on the news, sit around their plexiglass tables. This very intricate timeline that was presented, like the Orange Menace tweets about how Mike Pence really disappointed him, and literally 1 or 2 minutes later, Mike Pence is being chased down a hallway. So this very intricate chronology that they built between the Orange Menace tweets and activity of the marauders, pretty interesting. The security cameras, that footage that we'd never seen before. And then this great little graphic they did with the red dots and the blue dots. You could see exactly where the terrorists were, where the Congress and their staff were, and how close they are to each other. And it was pretty fascinating. And it told a story that we just didn't get. I remember myself when it first happened. It happened, of course, on a Wednesday. You and I talked about it on a Thursday. And then Friday, I think I was off for the day. So I only had that Thursday. And so then I had to come back on Monday and apologize to you guys for not really understanding what happened. Because over the weekend, then for the first time, I saw the video footage taken by the terrorists themselves and shared on Parler. And that was the first look I had. When I spoke to you the day after, and I think a lot of people, we just really didn't get it. We didn't understand the great number of people who were in there, the level of violence. We didn't see a lot of that footage on the first day. But man, over the weekend, we sure got a better understanding. And now today we got yet even a better understanding. And so I'd be very curious to know what Americans generally understand about this. Because let's be honest, most people don't follow the news like you and I do. They catch a headline here and there, but mostly they don't care. They just live in their lives. I'm not going to judge them necessarily. I think the world would be a better place if we all paid a little better attention, took some responsibility. Again, we're trying to have a democracy here, you guys. But let's leave that argument for another day. But yeah, I'd be curious. I'd be curious to know what people know, what they don't know, what they think they know about this grave, historic moment. Just about finished with our half hour together here. What else can I mention about yesterday? Just toward the end there, I really liked David Cicilline made a nice point. Again, kind of this timing thing. How several hours into the attack, and obviously all the managers are making a point that the Orange Menace is doing nothing about it. If and when he does tweet or make a little video, he's basically praising the attack, so that's good. But Cicilline had this nice little moment when he's talking about the phone call to Tuberville, Senator Coach Tuberville. This is right around 2 p.m., and we are well into the first hour, going on the second hour of this attack. It's all over the news, and the Orange Menace, instead of doing anything about it, makes a call to Tuberville to plead the case to delay the vote. So after this attack, what's his first name? Toby Tuberville? I think it's one of those alliterative things. Tommy Tuberville? Tubby Tuberville? We'll call him Tubby. Listen, Tubby, when you come back, if you come back, to get back to this voting thing, if the attackers haven't stopped it entirely, you got to delay, man. You got to delay for us. So he's asking Tuberville to do the very thing that the attackers are demanding. He's making the very same exact demands. You can't let this vote happen, man. Stop the steal. Yeah, this is an hour into the attack, and the Orange Menace's very first phone call to the Capitol. Everybody is pleading with him to make a statement, to stop the violence, to call off his dogs. He doesn't do it, but he does make one phone call to echo the demands of the attackers. There have been several stories now I've seen last couple of days of those rioters who have been caught, charged, arraigned. You know what they're telling the judges? Well, the Orange Menace asked us to do this. He's the boss. We're just carrying out his orders. Interesting development. I wonder if they're going to show up. I don't think we're going to have witnesses. That remains to be seen. I kind of doubt it. And I myself have mixed feelings about it. But part of me says, you know what? Maybe all of his accomplices, the people we talked about earlier, maybe we should subpoena every one of them. Maybe we should subpoena a whole bunch of the attackers and have them sit in the well of the Senate and say, yeah, the Orange Menace asked me to do it. I was following orders. And then I guess the final thing I'd like to say, I shouldn't even bring it up. Boy, I sure would like to see a secret ballot. But it can't happen. I've looked into it. You have to have 80. It's not simple majority. It's not the 60 filibuster proof. It's not the 67 2/3. No, you have to have 80 senators agree to go to a secret ballot. So that just is not going to happen. And it's a damn shame. Because last week, when we had the whole Marjorie Taylor Greene thing and the Liz Cheney thing and the vote and the secret vote and blah, blah, blah. Ever since then, I thought, oh my God, if we could only have a secret vote on whether or not to convict in the impeachment. Since it's never going to happen, I'll give my bold prediction. It would be, 88-12 for conviction if we had a secret ballot. I'm just convinced. But that's not going to happen. So, all right. Well, the first big day, 2 days technically, but whatever. Day 1 and day 2 under our belts. Day 3 happens today. We'll talk about it tomorrow. And we'll see where we go. All right. It's not a game. It's not a game. It's not inconsequential. It's not fun. It's important. I believe that. I believe it is important and should be treated with somber respect. I believe that. All right. Have a great day. Have a great night. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.